Good evening, friends. God bless you. Let us continue our study in understanding obedience or how it is described in the scripture. And we started studying from the First Peter chapter 1. And today we are going to read another passage, and we are going to understand there is one more Greek word is also translated in English as obey, but the Greek word's meaning is little different. Let me read first um, Romans 2, chapter 8. It goes like this: But he will pour out his anger and wrath on those who live for themselves, who refuse to obey the truth and instead live lives of wickedness. This is a very strong verse, and it basically, if you take literal translation, it says that God will pour out her anger and his wrath. Sorry, God will pour out his anger and his wrath on those who live for themselves. That means the people who are not following God, the people who are not doing God's work, people are looking after themselves only, they are subject to God's anger and wrath. And also the people who does not obey the truth. So this is a very strong thing. And you know that when God pours out his anger, when God pours out his wrath, nobody can stand in front of him. So this is a very, very, very serious matter. And so many times the devil uses this verse and tells Christians that, all right, you are not fully obeying God, you are not fully following God. So now what is left for you is the judgment. However, if you read this particular verse in understanding the obey word, which is English, where it came from. The obey here comes from the Greek word called peitho. Peitho means also peitho is translated here as obey. But if you look into dictionary, you can easily find out what peitho means. Peitho means to trust, to have confidence, be confident. So if you read this way, let us reread again this verse, understanding instead of obey, we use the peitho, that means to trust. So if you read this verse again, Romans 2:8, but he will pour out his anger and wrath on those who live for themselves, who refuse to trust the truth. Who refuse to trust the truth. God will pour out his anger and wrath. Now, what is the truth? Jesus says that I am the truth and the life. So basically, if you don't trust Jesus, then what is left is God's wrath and anger. So let us understand this particular verse with the understanding that peitho means trust or having confidence, not the obey how it is translated. Now there is a scholars, and they have translated as obey, and I'm not debating it. I'm not going to say one way or another, but I am trying to say that in Greek word for obey in this particular verse is called peitho, and peitho's meaning is to trust, to have a confidence or be confident. So let us try to understand this, what this verse means. So in Romans 2, if you see that Paul is simply stating how the law works. You have a salvation two ways. You can keep all the laws, or you can receive the forgiveness of sin through grace by Jesus Christ. So Paul is stating, Paul is not addressing the salvation piece here in chapter 2. He's simply stating that people who has not accepted Jesus Christ, and when they will stand in front of judgment seat, according to scripture in Revelation 21, when they will stand in front of judgment seat, God will judge them based on the law, because the law says that thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. And if you have done those things, that means what is left? Judgment. So Paul is, in chapter 2, is referring to explaining how the law works. If you speed over, if the law says that you should not speed more than 55 miles per hour, and if you're driving 60 miles per hour, the law says that you will be penalized. So Paul is stating it's just here that what law could do to you in chapter 2. So he's talking about the fact. And in chapter 3, Paul is, from chapter 3, Paul is referring to that righteousness comes to us apart from law. Law will not bring the righteousness. The grace and mercy of God brings the righteousness to us. And also in chapter 3, he's telling us that sinners are saved from wrath of God by being justified freely. Being justified freely by grace through the redemptive work of Jesus Christ. So Paul is stating in chapter 2 what law could do, and chapter 3 Paul is saying that now how the sinners can be saved or become justified, not by works but by grace. To understand how what chapter 2 message is, or particularly what chapter 2 verse 8 meant when Paul says that there is a wrath and anger of God on those who does not obey God. So if you wanted to understand, then you need to learn one thing, that when Paul wrote this letter, there was no chapter or verses. He wrote letter like we write a letter today. There is no parts. But for our understanding, the letters are divided in parts, in chapters and verses. So if you read in a continuation the thought process or the content or the context how Paul is writing, you need to start to understand chapter 2 verse 8. To understand correctly, you need to start reading from chapter 1, Romans 1:18, and you have to continue reading chapter 2:29. So if you read from Romans 1:18, and if you continue until reading 2:29, then you will understand what Paul is talking about. In chapter 2, he addresses the Jews in chapter 2, but if you read in a context, later on he's saying that in front of God now, Jews and Gentiles have the same thing. There is no separation. The Jew and Gentiles will be judged same manner, and the Jew and Gentiles will be forgiven also in the same manner by believing on Jesus Christ. So Romans chapter 2 verse 8 is talking about trusting in Jesus. And if you don't trust in Jesus, then what is left? The law. And based on law, what is left is wrath and anger of God. So if you read, let us read again, Romans 2:8, but he will pour out his anger and wrath on those who live for themselves, who refuse to patheo. He refused to trust the truth. And what is the truth? That Jesus died for you and me on the cross to bring us salvation. The same word patheo also used in Galatians 5:7. You were, not patheo, patho, sorry. Galatians 5:7, you were running well, who hindered you from obeying the truth. Paul says that who has hindered you from obeying the truth. Here also same word, peitho, Greek word for obey. Peitho means trust. So if you read Galatians 5:17, it says that who hindered you from trusting the truth, not obeying, from trusting the truth. Hebrew chapter 13 verse 17, also the same way. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your soul. Now there is a interesting two words here. One is a peitho, that means trust. So if you read, trust your leaders and submit to them. Now this submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls. The watch over, that word, the Greek word for watch over, some translation says the rule over you. So the rule over or the watch over is translated from the Greek word. In Greek, you have a word called hegemoia, and hegemoia means guide or lead. So if you read what the Greek words meant, you can read Hebrew 13:17, not like if you read the way it is written, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls. But if you read using Hebrew words or understanding Hebrew, trust your leaders and submit to them, for they guide you, for they lead you, not rule over you, not keep over your soul. James 3:3, very famous verse. Now if we put the bits into the horse's mouth by reading the James 3:3, it says that they will obey, so that they will obey us, we direct their entire body as well. James 3:3, let me open the James 3:3, just one second. James 3:3, I think I have forgot to copy it. James 3:3. James 3:3 says that, behold, we put bits into horses' mouth, that they may obey us. We put the bits into the horse's mouth, so that they obey us. Now the obey words here also is peitho. Peitho means trust. If you read that way, we put the bits into the horse's mouth, so that they will trust us. So in Bible, this is another word, peitho, is translated in obey, as obey. And we talked about yesterday Greek word hypako. That is also another word translated as in English version as obey. Philemon 1:21, having confidence in your obedience, I write to you. Having confidence in your obedience. But here the word is hypako, means hear. Hypako means hear and listen. Having confidence in your hearing and listening, I'm writing to you. So there are words, two words, hypako and peitho. They both are translated as obey in New Testament. Basically, peitho means trust, and hypako means hear and listen and follow. Submission after hearing. So if you keep this in mind when you read the New Testament, it would open up a new understanding for Father's heart. God bless you and thank you.